Hey guys, welcome back to another Trick Tip Tuesday, and today I'm going to talk about the difference between some of the metal shaping machines that we offer, because we get a lot of questions on why do I need an English wheel as opposed to a Mini-Max, or a Mini-Max as opposed to a Planishing Hammer, or any combination of those. So I'm going to kind of explain those machines, what they do, how they work, and why in some instances you might need all of them at some point. So first of all, send us an email, tips@Trick-Tools.com. Give us ideas for tips for these videos that we do, so we can include those in the next couple videos that we are going to be putting out. So for starters here, on the English wheel, to explain how an English wheel works and what makes it different than a hammer. So obviously you have an upper and lower anvil, and the whole premise of an English wheel is that you apply pressure from the lower die, so you move the lower die up, and essentially if you were to look at it with no material in there, you would create a gap between the two anvils that's going to be narrower than the width of the material that you're trying to run through it. So which in turn, what that does is as you put your material through it, it's actually smashing the metal as it rolls it through there, and that stretches the metal and starts to create the compound curves, which are going to vary depending on which lower anvil you might have in the machine. So, you know, with an English wheel, it's all about the rolling action. So you have to roll the machine back and forth and move your panel over as you do that in order to create the stretch and the shape in your part. It's not as accurate if you're trying to create a small little tiny stretched area, say like, you know, as if you were to think about it like if you were hammer and dollying. If you just need to hit this one little spot on a panel, with a hammer and dolly, you can actually hammer right on that spot. Whereas an English wheel, in order to hit that one spot, you would almost have to like move it in real tiny increments, and so it's not as good for that type of stretching. So that explains a little bit how an English wheel works. And if you wanted more direct stretching as far as hitting a little spot on a panel, that's where you'd go to more of a planishing hammer. So we have a couple planishing hammers here, and planishing hammers do the same thing as an English wheel in the sense that they stretch metal, but they do it in a different way. So these both have a type of air motor on them. This one is electrically driven, that creates its own air for the air motor. This one has an air motor that you would hook into a compressor. So how a planishing hammer works is when you push on the pedal, you bring the dies together, and the dies are always in contact with your part, and there's a weight inside the motor on both of these types of machines that's actually going to be doing the hammering action. So the dies aren't actually moving up and down to do the hammering. So they work in a different way, but say to like a Mini-Max machine, which is actually going to have a hammering stroke. But so essentially, as an English wheel stretches, these machines stretch as well. But you know, if you have these together, you have your part in here, you can really just move your part around in little tiny increments. If you were trying to do a small little spot, you can do a lot more precise stretching with it, or even with the right die set and the right hammer settings, you can actually do some large panel stretching and smoothing and that sort of thing in a similar way that you would do on an English wheel. So they can both be used for that type of work. They're just done in a different way. So there are instances where you know, you might want both. After doing years of metal shaping, there's definitely times where I've worked stuff on an English wheel. I'll come over, do a little bit of work on a planishing hammer on that same part, maybe go back to the English wheel and vice versa, and be able to do a little bit different types of stretching on the same part using two different machines, even though they are both doing the same type of work, which is stretching metal. So now if we move over to our Mini-Max, which is basically a small fabricated version of an old school Pullmax machine. The difference between these two machines and say a planishing hammer or an English wheel is that these machines actually have a hammering stroke. So the dies actually move up and down to do the hammering action, which allows you to do some different types of metal shaping. So you can do similar type of work to a planishing hammer, where you can put dies in there and actually do some panel shaping in one of these. But really the value of these machines is more in what you can do with beading and stepping, and that sort of thing. So these machines work where if you were to activate the machine, the dies actually move up and down to be able to do the work on the part. So again, all these machines can stretch metal and they can move metal and you can shape with them. It just depends on what exactly you're doing with your metal shaping. That's going to determine which machine you need, what dies you might need for your machine at that point, that sort of thing. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of explanation on the different types of machines. There's a lot of different versions of these machines out there. So you want to pick something that's going to be a solid option for your application. And if you have any questions, give us a call at Trick Tools and we can help you out, sort through maybe which machine might be best for you. Send us your ideas for Trick Tip Tuesday at tips@Trick-Tools.com. Thanks for watching this week's Trick Tip, and we'll see you next week.